Welcome to the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast, where we will go beyond the balance sheet with our guests, not only to share from our personal experience as financial advisors of over 25 plus years, but also to learn from our guests about the issues and topics that are important to them. Our firm specializes in taking care of the financial plans for individuals and small businesses by helping our clients identify their individual goals and taking a conservative and ongoing approach to helping accomplish them. We are located in Hickory, North Carolina, and look forward to continuing to serve our clients and our community. Thank you for joining us. We hope you enjoy this week's episode. Welcome back to another episode of the Southeast Retirement Planners Podcast. Today, I'm excited to have our guest, Hank Eimer, with me. Just a quick note as we kind of get into things, and I'll introduce Hank. Just please remember to go to our website, www.seretirementplanners.com, and look up our podcast information. You can like and subscribe to our podcast stuff on Spotify and on Google Podcasts, as well as on our YouTube channel. So be sure to do that. Give us a thumbs up, like that. Check out our content. That really helps us make sure we know what's being listened to and what people want to hear more of. And if you have any suggestions about other content you want us to do in the future, please shoot us a note and let us know. So with that, Hank, welcome aboard.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so Hank Eimer is in charge of a local real estate office here in Hickory, Coldwell Banker. Do I say Coldwell Banker, Boyd and Hassell?
Boyd and
I need
Hassell.
to say all that at the same time.
Yep, distinguishes us from the rest.
Right, so very prominent real estate office here in town, and Hank and I have been friends for a long time since I came to town in, I guess, around 2000 when I finished Lenore Ryan, and got to know each other, and our families got to know each other pretty well. And you've helped me out with a number of real estate questions and situations through the years, and so I'm grateful for that. And one of the things I want to talk to you about today is what's going on in this crazy real estate market, but we will get to that as time rolls on. But thanks for coming on.
No, thanks for having me. It's always kind of a topic that everybody wants to discuss right now, because it's wild. And, you know, what people don't really realize is it's always secular. You know, I mean, these waves come, every 6-7 years. So it's an industry that we have to be ready for the downturn, kind of like yours. And, but when you have a market like we're having right now, it's one like we've never seen before. So it's a topic we hit quite a bit.
And it is different now, I think, right? I mean, this circumstance that we're in right now seems like it's unlike things we've seen in the past.
Yeah, because 06, 07, that was bank driven. You know, that was a different animal. This is completely different, and the atmosphere and the response from sellers and buyers and the demand and just the risks that people are taking to put themselves in a home is just like nothing we've seen. Yeah.
All right. So we'll get to that in a minute. One of the things that I wanted to at least, I have a question for you, a little bit about your background. So you grew up in Hickory,
right?
And then went to Elon University.
Correct.
Played baseball there.
Right.
And my favorite position of all time, behind the plate, playing catcher.
Thankless position.
It is a warhorse, like workhorse type of job for sure.
Yep.
I was not very good at it when I played, but thankfully was able to move to the infield a little bit and get out of the firing line. Yeah. But so you finished up at Elon and then ended up back in Hickory. But during your career, just tell me a little bit about your baseball experience and just kind of what that means to you.
Well, we both have kids that play sports, and I always think about my journey when I was younger and kind of going through the sports and how it's changed from today. And I think sports give us life lessons, and whether you learn them in Little League or you learn them in middle school or high school or college, wherever you learn them, I think it's certainly an important thing. Not everybody has those life lessons learned on a field. Sometimes it's from a piano teacher or, just somebody that interacts with them. But I always feel like I was put in positions that helped me grow as a young man and as a man, further down the road. And I feel like sports kind of opened my eyes to that. I was one of those kids that was very good at any sport. I was just okay at everything that I jumped into, and it forced me to really work hard. And I think that that's something that kids don't get to see very often, until later on, until they pick a sport that they want to do. But, I tell our little guys that want to be the best 12-year-old baseball player, soccer player, football player in the world that, really and truly, it's about falling in love with a sport. And that's what this time in your life is about, is falling in love with that sport. And that's what I did growing up. And when I got to high school, I didn't start on my JV team. Right. And I just decided that I was tired of seeing my buddies play and me not playing. And so, not from being pushed by my dad or anything else, I decided that I wanted to get better and went to camps and really worked hard and kind of figured out what a work ethic was. And those 2 years led me from being not a starter on a JV team my sophomore year to actually getting to play after high school. So I think my college career isn't something that, it wasn't a career. I always tell people, I was on the team, I got to play, but it certainly helped me with my work ethic. It helped me with discipline. It helps me be a better dad. It helps me be a better manager at my firm. So, what I take away from it is I don't miss playing. I miss laying in the grass with my buddies when we were playing. But I do feel like it was an important part of who I am, and I'm trying to give that to these little guys that I get to coach, every day.
Isn't it wild? I mean, you and I have talked about this quite a bit, but times are different for young people today than they were for us. And when you talk about like you need to fall in love with the game, fall in love with the sport, I think we as parents are the ones that are screwing that up the most for these kids, I mean, the idea of like not making your JV team, I think we just had this conversation a couple of weeks ago. Like that kid doesn't exist anymore. Right. Like if you're not making the team, if you're not an all-star, right, we're gonna drive across town, or we're gonna drive out of town to find you a team that you can now be an all-star on. Right. Instead of, and I think that's kind of leaking into all of sports and kind of all of society right now in a pretty big way. Yeah. And I heard a quote the other day, and kids don't want to be a beginner at anything. Yeah, we were just talking about that. Yeah, I mean, they really don't. And it's kind of sad because you can pick up a sport at 13, at 12, at 15, at 17, and you can be really good. And I think that that's something that is a parent's obligation, a coach's obligation. But when a teacher walks down a hallway and they see a kid that's maybe not involved in something, because a coach is also a mentor in these kids' lives, and you can say, hey, why don't you try basketball? Why don't you try football? Why don't you try it? Because nobody is asking those questions. And I think that that's the toughest part right now, is that nobody is asking these kids that aren't playing to play, just to play, have fun. Well, all the conversations are different. My daughter is in 6th grade and played soccer for the first time this year. And she's not a good soccer player at all. And nor should she be. She's never played soccer before, right? But she's playing with a bunch of girls who've been playing since they were little, and they're very good. Right. And it was the most fun for me to have this one bit of a conversation with her a couple of weeks ago. I didn't get a chance to go to their game, and so we're having dinner afterwards, and I'm checking in with her. I was like, how was the game? How'd you guys do? She's like, we won. I was like, oh, man, I'm so excited. That's great. Congratulations. And she says, well, I didn't get to play. And I said, I didn't ask you if you got to play. Yeah. I asked if your team won. Like, you're on the team. Like, this isn't about you. This is about the team. So I'm so glad your team won. And that was and that was a little bit of a setup on my part, but I felt like it's important because they don't hear that enough. No, I don't think. No, they don't. And I think that, parents can make the sport experience, they can tarnish it and, have kids. Yeah. And we talk about this, or they have an opportunity to really guide these kids into really testing the waters on what their athleticism is, and maybe there isn't. Maybe they say, "Hey, I'm good being a pianist. I'm good. I really like math. I'm more fishing. Of an engineer. I love fishing. Right. But I think that it's a parent's job to kind of push them to say, "Hey, what fire do you have in your?" And maybe it's something else, but if we don't do it, then they're certainly not going to go out looking for it. I know. We got a lot of work to do.
Telling me.
We got to help each other out, though. That was fun too. Talking about that the other day. We gotta support each other because it's not easy. It's a tough job right now for sure.
Yeah.
All right. Well, switching gears a little bit. I feel Autumn and I were talking about this the other day. I feel maybe a little responsible for the housing market situation in Hickory because it was literally it was Memorial Day weekend a year ago when Autumn and I accidentally bought a house.
Yep.
And you remember talking about that with us.
Yes.
So at that time, the housing market was strong. It was healthy, reasonable would be one way to describe it. But the house that we bought was on the market for 48 hours and had 27 offers all over the asking price.
Right.
And I had never heard of that happening before. You were surprised by that to a degree, but you were more prepared for it than I was, certainly. Anyway, we were lucky enough to buy the house. Well, now that's the norm.
For sure.
Right? Like right now, if a house goes on the market, it's not, there's less negotiations, there's less haggling, there's above and beyond the asking price. What in the world is going on?
Well, inventory is what's going on, So there's two things really going on. People are getting to see the dollars that they're going to make on their home. The amount of money that they're going to pull from the sale of their home. Low interest rates that are going to allow them to jump into a bigger mortgage. And the pandemic had something to do with it because they realized I can't be in this little house with my family much longer. I need a basement. I need a home office. I want a bigger backyard. I want all these things. So people started on that. But the inventory, you have to realize the older population that would have gone into a nursing home didn't put their house on the market, right? So we lose that inventory. The person that was during the pandemic.
Oh, okay.
During the pandemic.
Yeah, right.
The person that was scared about their job, that they may not be able to, keep their job after the pandemic because everybody's working from home. They have some uncertainty. They decided not to move. So the inventory got smaller and smaller. Then you have the increase in lumber, then you have all these things. So people aren't building homes. So you have this low inventory that everybody starts looking at. And, before, I always talk about HGTV is kind of the bane of my existence. And the reason that I say that is everybody wants to look at homes. Everybody wants to to decorate a home. Everybody wants to renovate a home. And that's why they have 15 shows about it.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
So this just magnified that. So now everybody's on our site, cbbh.com. Everybody's on Zillow. Everybody's on Troya. Everybody's doing those. And it starts to kind of, this ramping up of I need a different space for my family. Because Hickory is a different market. We're accustomed to, you buy a bigger house when your family gets bigger. You buy a smaller house when those kids move off. You buy a house when you move into town, you sell it when you leave. And that's not it anymore. And when you were talking about how 27 offers were on your house. Okay. So that's the beginning of the pandemic. You started seeing 5, 10, 27's a lot, 5, 10, 15, offers on a home. Well, agents started to think that they were smart and they'd say, okay, we're just going to offer 50 grand over. We know it's not going to appraise, but we're going to tie it up. So these people that are doing $5,000 and $10,000, $15,000 over, we're just going to go 50.
You're just going to bump them out of the line.
And then when the appraisal comes in, we'll say, oh, it only appraised for 20 over. So we'll buy it for 20 over because the bank won't lend us that. Okay. So they were kind of hedging their bet a little bit, right? Well, sellers started to get discouraged from that because it was happening more and more. So they decided, well, we're not going to take that. We're going to take the person that's going to offer us the best due diligence fee, which is a non-refundable fee that goes towards the purchase price. So now buyers had to just start really putting skin in the game.
All right. Explain to me, I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yep, no.
Explain to me the difference between due diligence money, earnest money, and is there another?
No,
those are the two. Are they the same?
No. So, okay. So when you make an offer on a home, and we'll just use an example, $300,000 home. Historically, 1% would be what you'd put down as earnest money, which is your intent to buy the home. Hey, I have interest in it. This
your placeholder.
Yep. This is what I'm going to put towards the purchase of the home. That money is safe for the buyer until you go through your due diligence date. Your due diligence date is a date that you can have a survey, inspections, you can search the title, you can do anything that you want to do to make sure that this is the home that you want to purchase.
Right.
Okay, so if you decide to walk away, that money comes back with you and you can walk and look for another home.
Okay.
The due diligence fee, when it was hard to sell a house, you'd make an offer of $300,000, you'd put the $3,000 in earnest money down, and you'd say, I am not going to give you any non-refundable money because your house has been sitting on the market for 4 months.
Right.
Fast forward to today, where houses are staying on the market minutes and hours. So to make it interesting for the seller, the buyer is saying, okay, here's my $300,000 house, my offer. I'm going to offer $320,000. I'm going to put $3,000 down in earnest money. And I'm also going to put $4,500 down in due diligence, which I'm writing a check to you, seller, that you can cash tomorrow when you accept it.
It comes off of the price.
Goes off the purchase price.
If we close and do all that.
Correct.
Right? Okay.
But right when I decide that I don't like the way the sun hits it or the septic has failed or something,
right,
and I decide to walk away, I keep the $3,000 earnest money, but you keep my $4,500. Okay? So the real test for the seller now is getting somebody to give you due diligence money that you feel comfortable taking it off, because they're really buying time. The buyer is buying time.
Right.
I need 4 weeks. This $4,500 is 4 weeks for me to do all these inspections.
So has the due diligence number just cranked up all of a sudden?
Skyrocketed.
So people are like, I want $10,000, I want $20,000 in due diligence money for a $300,000 house.
We had somebody the other day put $4,500 down on a $225,000 house. The problem with that is that the inspection came back bad.
Sure.
They wanted to walk, but couldn't, because it was going to take them 6 months to recoup that $4,500. Yeah. So now they're locked into a home that they're concerned about some of the repairs. So it's right. Really, and the seller doesn't feel obligated to do anything because they have people waiting in line.
Right.
Right.
And incidentally, inspectors, that's maybe a whole nother podcast.
You could have another show
about the value of a home inspection. I mean, and I was talking about that. I won't get into real specifics, but I was talking about this with someone the other day, and they said, you can have a brand new home that's built, passes inspection to be built, and you sell it brand new, and an inspector comes in during the sales process and just rips it to pieces and says there's all this stuff wrong with it.
Right.
It's like, that's their job.
That's their job.
So that's what they're doing. But anyway,
right.
So that's a whole nother thing.
Yeah, but so they're buyers and agents and sellers this market is kind of morphing into different things. So sellers are being a little bit more savvy and not being just like dollar signs sitting in their eyes with these high offers, because that's what these agents were doing. Is that let's tie it up, let's tie it up, let's tie it up. Now the sellers are saying, I'd rather you put skin in the game, because I know that I can't get what you're asking me to get. Because the appraisal process, if you think about it, nobody really thinks about it like this, but when you start appraising a home, you're doing it off previous sales. Sure. And with a market that is skyrocketing.
Or neighbors or whatever.
Right.
Yeah.
But if a home sold 4 months ago and it sold for $280 and today it's $300, you're still going to see that $280. And so the appraisers are trying to make this guess on how the market is progressing. And, it really and truly, they have a tough job, along with agents too, because, I'll go into your home and say the comparables from the last 6 months prove to me that your house is worth $300. We could probably get $325.
Right.
In 2009 and 10, I could go in and I'd say the stuff from 6 months ago proves that it's probably worth $300. I'm not sure if we can get $270.
Yeah.
It's just the way that the market changes. And so, you kind of have this gut feeling that you have to go, and that's why an experienced agent is so important in times like these, is because you really have to know the ins and outs of what's going to happen, especially if you get 27 offers and which ones are viable, because the person that's hurting right now is the first-time home buyer, the person that's getting a VA loan or an FHA loan who doesn't get to put down a lot of money.
Behind. Yep.
They're looking at 40 houses, they're writing 18 offers, and people aren't even looking at them because people with cash and large chunks that are put down. So really and truly, I feel terrible for the person that's trying to buy it, the first-time home buyer.
Yeah. Well, and aren't we now also writing offers that say regardless of appraisal?
Yeah.
I mean, so the appraisals now are almost irrelevant because they have cash or whatever that they can support whatever that difference in value is.
Right.
Which is kind of hard to believe. You glossed over this, the idea of why it's important to be working with an experienced agent. And I think that sort of publicly out in the world, people are like, the housing market's on fire. I'm just going to put a sign up for sale by owner. We tried that, and it was like crickets, okay? Which I believe y'all are all in cahoots on some of that, but that's that's also another maybe episode. But it absolutely, and especially in a market like this, when you think everything is so easy, now the complexity just ramps up because the speed ramps up, the timing ramps up. All of those moving parts are happening at lightning speed and at higher valuations. So the anxiety is higher. The sort of value of where things are keeps moving. And as just a normal individual, like there's no way I could manage that.
Right.
You know, it's kind of like when the stock market's just booming, everyone's like, I should be my own stock market guy.
Yeah.
Right. I don't need a financial planner.
Right.
It's like, well, this is now, okay, but there are other times in your life when things are going to be moving around and there's a lot of pieces outside of your financial plan that are going to impact that. You need to be able to navigate all that stuff together, and that's similar to what you're talking about.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. Like financial planning is, that I often talk about that and how it relates to this is because, there's plenty of information out there on how to buy stock, and do everything. And there's plenty of information out there. You can put a sign out in the yard. You can do it. And so, there's plenty of information that lead people to that point. But I really and truly say it is not getting somebody to look at your home, to see your home. Because we use digital marketing and stuff that other companies use that you can see. But it really comes down to when we find somebody that likes your home. That's when our job starts. We do market and we do all that thing. And a real estate company, really and truly, I own a marketing company. I don't own a real estate company. I own a marketing company. And but
your job, I mean, the marketing is almost like that's the commodity of it.
Right.
I mean, and when I look at what we do, the portfolio side of things, the executing of trades, that's the commodity. Anybody can do Robinhood or E-Trade or whatever.
Sure.
That's the commodity of it. That's not actually where the value is
right.
for our clients, and it's very similar.
Right. And so when we get somebody that sees it online and says, that's the house I want, that's when our job starts. I feel like, it's ushering them through the complexity of the next 45 days and the emotion of the next 45
right.
and what this really looks like, because a home inspection can be scary, and
it's not good.
No, yeah, it can be scary.
Yeah.
It can be scary. And, the appraisal, the title work, we had a question the other day about, there's a graveyard on a piece of property that we're actually selling. And, really and truly, what is the ability for the family members that want to visit that graveyard? What obligation does a new buyer have?
What do you do if there's a graveyard? Are you, I mean... you can't just, is it all right, how many people are buried?
15.
So headstones and everything.
Yes.
Okay.
So
it's a real graveyard.
It's a real graveyard.
It's not like just papaw.
If there is not access to it, they can appeal to the county to get access to it. But the homeowner can stipulate times and dates and everything else that they can do it. And then removing the graveyard is extremely expensive.
So you can do that, though.
Sure.
Never mind that the house is haunted, which is probably not on the flyer, but it has to be at this point.
But these things are the things that we see every day. Oh, yeah. We don't like to put that on the flyer about ghosts and any problems that we might have. But the sales manager that was at Coldwell Banker before I started, when I started, said, if you've done one transaction, you've done one transaction. Because they're all different, and they all have their own twists and turns, and every one of them, we do 1,200 sales every year, and every one of them is completely different.
All right, so when you're looking at our local market here, Hickory, Catawba County area, there's different segments of the market. I'm sure you kind of have, sort of dividing lines about the homes, whether it's location or value or whatever. What do you see? Are all segments right now just kind of on fire? Are there certain areas that maybe have a little bit more value than other areas?
If you are, at the beginning of the year, we'd say, if you had anything 250 and below, you can't keep it on the market.
Okay.
Right? It's selling immediately. Then that went to 350. Then that went to 500. Then, it really jumped to 600.
So right now, 600 and below is just
now the pool is smaller. You know,
Sure.
I mean, the buyer pool is smaller. You may have 6 showings, 8 showings, right? Whereas the 150 house, you're having 45 in a weekend. Where the 500-600, you're having 10. But those 10 interested buyers out there are making offers and kind of jumping on it as well.
Yeah.
So, I mean, we're still selling. The real question becomes when you start to get the higher price ranges are, everybody compromises when they buy a house. I'll just go ahead and say it. Everybody does.
Okay.
If you buy a $100,000 house, you say, hey, or a 2-bedroom house, you're like, I really wish I had 3. The person buying the $1 million home is like, I had 4-car garage.
Right.
They're all compromising something. But really and truly, the one segment that we kind of see the only problem with is when you get to a specific price range, you start talking about insulating your investment, and that's the lake, or that's, something like that, or acreage.
Right.
And so if something's 700, 800, 900, and it doesn't have the Catawba River behind it, then people start saying, do I want to make this investment? Because that's really, if I'm going to spend this much money, I would like to be out there.
Right.
So that's probably the only segment that we kind of see is kind of tough.
It's dicey. So do you call this whole experience right now a bubble? I mean, that was kind of part of the question I wanted, the overarching question. I mean, is this a housing market bubble that is going to burst? So all these people that are buying houses right now at these inflated prices, they're not going to be able to sell them.
Not in the time frame that. So the real problem in 06 and 07, I'll compare it to 06. 06, 07 was a bubble. That burst. Right?
Yeah.
It burst. And the problem that we'd have people that would walk into a home and they'd look at you and they'd immediately say, what can I get for this 2 years from now? What can I get? And they weren't thinking about.
When it was a financing issue then,
right.
too. It was like, I can finance well beyond my means and we'll be fine. And then all that blew up. And so then the market sort of crumbled underneath. This is, maybe it's not a financing. Well, I mean, I guess it partly is because interest rates are so low, but it feels different.
Yeah. What an agent needs to be doing right now with their clients is they need to be very transparent that they're buying at the top of the market, that they're buying over the value of the home. If this market changes, which it will, okay, we've had a good real estate market since 2014, 2015, right? It's been good. So I don't call this a bubble because it is really slowly ramped up, but we are going to see it come to an end, and that's going to come with interest rates, start clicking up as well.
Which probably won't be for a while.
Probably won't be for a while.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this is going to end soon. I feel like this is going to be a housing market that is going to have some legs to it for a little bit longer. But I do compare it to 06 and 07 because we had these same conversations with these individuals telling them, you're buying at the top of the market. And sometimes clients need to push us out of the way and say, I want the house. I want it at $10,000 more. I want it at $15,000 more. But our job is to also say, in 5 years, when you go to sell this house, and you have to bring $10,000 to closing or $5,000 to closing. But you can look at me and you can say, my kids grew up in a great neighborhood. I love the school district. It was close to my church.
Sure.
I love my neighbors. I had a great experience. Would it have been worth that $5,000 or $10,000? If you could say yes to that, then let's pursue it. But you have to remind them of that because of the excitement that they're in.
Oh, yeah. Well, and the pressure. I mean, the conversation you and I had when we were buying our house last year, I was like, where do we go with this? We know we need to make an offer over asking.
Right.
What does that even mean? Is it $10,000? Is it $50,000? Like, I don't even know. I've never heard of such a thing.
Right.
And the advice you gave me at that time was you need to put what you called your best foot forward. Yeah. You need to put in an offer that if somebody comes in and pays an extra $5,000 for it, you're going to be okay with that.
Yep.
And so it might stretch you, but you need to just find a number that you and Autumn are okay with, where if you don't get it because somebody comes in a little bit higher, you're not going to kick yourself for it. And that's what we did. And I think it was our kids. We wrote like one of these little love letters to the homeowners about how perfect our children are. And I think that's probably what, I don't know. It could have.
Well, now they don't want you to share those love letters.
Really?
Yeah.
Why? Because
they feel like
who's the they doesn't want you to.
The real estate commission doesn't really want us to share them for the simple fact that we could be, anybody. and this is a topic that I don't want to really get into, but, we are held to strict regulations on discrimination, familial status, race, creed, whatever it is, the protected classes. But some of these love letters, a seller could discriminate.
Absolutely.
And so really and truly
that's happening.
The agent should not be part of that. And so really and truly as a seller, as an agent, you're supposed to say we shouldn't embark on that kind of thing because it could bring in discrimination.
Yeah, that's a little heavy comment there, but I'm 100% sure that's happening.
Yeah.
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 I never would have thought about that, but I get that.
And then, you're putting, and everybody wants to write these love letters. And, that's, if the bad thing is if another offer comes in and it's $15,000 more, this family is upset because they didn't win the house, but it's because they were discriminated against.
Yeah.
And so it just makes for, and the real estate market, unlike commercial's not emotional. Commercial's about numbers, right?
Sure. No, this is definitely emotional. Definitely emotional.
I want to bring my first kid here. That's where Johnny grew up. And it gets real emotional.
Yeah. That's an interesting thought. I had not really considered that. So what part, I think that there are some people that are doing really well in this market. Okay. I mean, the challenge conversation I had with a client the other day was, we just bought our house a year ago. We could turn around and sell it today for probably maybe $100,000 more than we bought it for. I don't know. That might be a little aggressive, but we could maybe do that. But then we would have to move.
Right.
And we would have to go buy somebody else's house that's $100,000 overpriced.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So some of the people that are really doing well in this environment either is a second home or they have another place to go or they don't mind renting. And I know that's sort of an unpopular opinion. It's sort of as a sidebar conversation about community college is a good option, but people don't like talking about it because they just feel like there's something negative about that, right?
Right.
So are those the people that are doing well now?
Well, you say rental. The person that's doing real well right now is the individual that wants to liquidate their rental income. And so they have 50 homes that they've accumulated over the last 40 years. They have them paid off, and now they can individually. And before people say, I just want to sell them all together, 40 or 50 of them, it's a $2 million portfolio or whatever, $1 million portfolio, and you're going to have to find an investor that's a savvy investor that knows that it's at the top of the market, and he's probably unwilling to give you what it's worth today.
Right.
What they're doing, though, is they're picking them apart, and they're just putting them out there and gaining 10, 15% over what the true value is, and they're just ripping them off.
Just cashing out.
Those are the people that are doing well. They're not buying anything, and they're just selling.
They're just selling with their inventory.
Selling their inventory. And the individuals that we're seeing, the other person that is doing, we're seeing a lot of refinancing. Individual that's 55, 60, still has still has income, good income, and has years before they retire. They're taking advantage of this huge interest rate, and they're pulling out their equity, and they're going to their financial planner, and they say, hey, I live in a $500,000 home that I owe nothing on. I could pull $350,000 out of it. I want to give it to you.
That's it.
And I'm going to continue to pay this 2.75 interest rate, and I'll let my kids worry about it.
So what are rates looking like right now? I mean, they're still historically low.
Yeah, they're 3, anywhere from, people were getting 2.5 to 3, up to 4. But, it's so funny. When I bought my first house, it was an 8,
Yeah.
it was.
You thought you were getting a deal.
Yeah.
Well, you were getting a deal at that time.
Right. Yeah. People at our firm, remember it when it was 18.
Right.
And, you had to do owner financing and everything like that. But, that's why I think it's going to be interesting when rates go up, because people are going to see 5% and they're going to say, oh my gosh, this is terrible. This is ridiculous. And that's why I always would like, if they go up to 8 and then come back to 6 real quick. Because then people are like, well, at least it's not 8.
It's a good deal, right?
At least
you're right.
8.
That climb up is going to be a deterrent for sure. What people don't really realize too is when we talk about 13, 16% rates, mortgage rates back then, you also could invest and get guaranteed income in, 10% numbers at that time, 8%, 10% for long periods of time. So there was, your checking account actually earned money then, where now there's no hope for that. I mean,
Right.
you're not earning any money on
Right.
on checking accounts and things like that at this point. All right. So as for an individual, not someone who owns a lot of rental property, but just for an individual, if they're considering buying, what are you telling them to look for? If they're considering selling, what do they need to be thinking about?
So the selling part of it, everybody wants to say, yeah, it's really easy. It is really easy. But I think that people want to put it on the market before it's ready to be put on the market. And that's what an agent will help with. And so we're talking about sellers now, okay? And then we'll go back to buyers. So sellers need to take time and investigate their home and really do a good job. Now, our market is different than others, okay? I mean, we have people giving sight unseen offers and, they've just seen pictures and stuff like that. So it's hard to speak to that one because you could really say, seller, you don't have to do very much.
Well, I mean, that's an option.
I mean, that is
out there now.
That is an option.
However, a new coat of paint goes a long way.
Spending money at that front door.
Okay.
What does it look like from the exterior? Cleaning out closets, attics, stuff like that, because the family of 4 that lives there has everything jam packed. You have to make a family of 5 believe that they could live there comfortably.
Right.
So if you're planning on moving, these are things you're going to do anyway. Take the time to, go through the closets, take out all this stuff, make it so it looks like it is packed at the right amount, because we all overpack our houses, right?
Yeah.
Spend the time to do the small things out in front, mulch, get your bushes trimmed, plant flowers, do all that. All of that, people don't realize, goes a long way. First impression goes a long way. You wouldn't believe, it's so funny to show houses to individuals because you can pull in a driveway and people will say, I got to have it. This is it.
There's a feeling.
This is it. I got to have it. So for sellers right now, don't have to do very much. Okay. If I were going to sell my house right now, I would take time to go through and declutter my entire house. Right? I'd also have a home inspection.
So we wrestled with that. And we ended up not doing sort of preliminary home inspection. We did it after the offer and all that sort of stuff. And then we had to kind of navigate that.
Right.
But that was one of the things that we were talking about.
Right. The only reason I do it is really and truly, it's kind of nice to have somebody in your crawl space, in your attic, doing these things every so often. I'm not in my crawl space every year. I'm not in it, and there could be a leak going on right now. There could be one going on in the attic right now, Right. So I personally am not opposed to having a home inspection every 5 years on a home.
Really? Okay.
Okay.
Yep.
I mean, the home inspector also looks at it a little bit differently. I'm not putting my house on the market. I just want you to tell me what's going on.
Right.
I just want you to tell me what's going on.
Now, if I were a seller and had my own home inspection, would the buyer take it and that would suffice, or are they then going to turn around and have another home inspection?
Well, so
how does that normally work?
So what normally ends up happening is if a seller has a home inspection, they present it and they say, "Hey, this is the home inspection that we did. It was $400. This is the invoices from the things that we had done with it. We did 1, 2, 4, 6, and 8.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. We don't plan on doing the other things on there. Okay. Because they're small. They were there when we were here. They haven't impacted our life, whatever it may be. We don't care if you have another inspection, but we don't care to do anything else.
So it just allows you to kind of put your game plan together ahead of time. Okay.
And a lot of times before this market, when somebody would be selling a $250,000 house and then they negotiate down to $235,000 and they say, okay, it's under contract. I really didn't want to go down that far, but we did, and that's fine. We'll sell it for $235,000. The next thing you know, they have a home inspection and there's $4,000 worth of repairs, and they're like, "Oh, I went down to $235,000. I'm not doing $4,000 more." And so it just kind of lets you, not to say that they're not going to come back and say, "Hey, here's another $200 repair that we need to have done," and then you get to make a decision. But at least you can put your plan together and say, "We've saved you $400." And we've made these repairs.
Yeah.
So we know what's wrong with the house.
That's good advice.
Thank you.
That's good advice. I like it. All right. So,
but the buyer, did you want to
know? The buyer. Yes. Okay. Thank you.
So the buyer, the buyer's a little bit tougher. I think it's extremely important to find an agent that you trust. Okay. And I'm giving a little trade secret of my own to other agents right now. Okay. So There's a ton of us out there. There's 700 of us.
Well, we don't know if anyone listens to this.
Okay.
So at this point, it could be, you might just be telling me. I don't know.
So, an agent's real value is in their experience and, being able to usher them through the process and guide them. But it's also to be accessible and to be able to sit there and look a client in the face and tell them if they're going down the wrong direction or not, and with their experience. And I feel like an agent in this type of market is going to be working in your best behalf. We have 42 agents in our firm, and we know what's going on the market before it comes on the market. When I'm working on a listing that's 150, I'm working on a listing that's 80, I'm working on something by the college, I'm working on something, and we have this network that we use that not everybody sees. And even the smaller, even the smaller firms get kind of discouraged by it because a lot of times we sell our own listings, and they don't, and we have the most listings. And so, really and truly, getting an agent that can advocate for you and actually look for stuff, because if
then they're proactive.
Yeah, Zillow, our website, everything else, when it hits the market, everybody sees it. You need to be able to have somebody that's finding it before it hits those sites.
Yeah, and they know you well enough. You've shown some houses with them,
right?
And now they have an idea of like, oh, this would be a good fit for y'all,
right? And and that's the thing too. Is like I think the biggest thing is we get challenged all the time. Why didn't you show me this house? It popped on Zillow. Why didn't you show me this house?
Yeah.
I love it. Master's upstairs. You said you had to have a master on the main. Have to.
Right.
That's why I didn't. That's where you learn.
That's why we asked that
you're
question.
Listening, that your agent is advocating for you because, you said you needed a double garage. It's a carport. Now, are there going to be opportunities for the agent to say, hey, I found this listing that hits 9 out of 10. This is the one that it didn't hit. Sure. But when you sit there and you tell me that you will not live in a house with a master on the second floor, then we listen to that. We do listen to it because we want to give you what you like.
A worse conversation is, why do you keep showing me these houses? I've told you we have to have a master on the main. Yeah.
Right.
So, all right. That is also very good advice. Thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm sure other people someday hopefully will benefit from it as well.
Appreciate it.
All right. On the subject of advice, one of the questions, I have a couple of questions for you.
Okay.
And I feel like we could spend a lot of time talking about this, but you've been very helpful to kind of decipher a little bit of what's going on in our local market. But I do want to kind of wrap up. When you think about financial advice or financial decisions, what's the worst financial decision you've ever made?
Okay, it's funny because it immediately pops into my head what it was, and it was something. Okay, so I'll give you the example. Okay, I'll give you the story of it. So I was 22 years old, recently married. Okay, and I was. We went to the beach with my wife's family. My father-in-law, who's also in real estate, Coldwell banker, was my partner.
Yeah. Yep.
I trust him immensely with advice and financial advice and real estate advice. And we were at the beach. We were at Oak Island, and we were driving around. He was building a house, and we were driving around, just looking around. The two of us. We went and got coffee, and we were just driving around. He said, "Hank, let's go down this street right here. I think there's a couple lots that are for sale." I said, "Okay." Turned down the road, and there they sat, three lots. He said, "You need to buy one of these lots." I said, "Harry, I just married your daughter. I financed a car. I'm 22. This $19,000 lot might as well be $1 million.
Yeah.
I can't do it.
It's out of reach.
I cannot do it." And he understood completely. He's a great mentor and man. And he said, I understand. He's like, I wanted to give you the opportunity because I think they're a good investment. And he was going to buy them. So he went on to buy them. In 2007, they sold for 5 times what he bought them for. Okay, so 5 years, made 5 times. That decision haunts me to this day.
So that I'm trying to figure out what category that falls in, because that's not the worst. Well, I guess that would be the worst investment decision you didn't make.
I didn't make.
Yeah.
Yeah. So financial decision, I was trying to think of something that I did drastically wrong, and I couldn't think of something like that. Although I did, I'll take that back. I bought a rental house, and I decided to be a landlord. And about 10 years ago,
that's a tough job.
Okay, and my tenants, we bought it for $30,000. We put 20 in it, so still, we still don't have a ton in it if we're getting rent back from it. And every tenant I had completely destroyed the house. Yeah, you're doing new carpet every 6 months. You're doing all this plumbing. And by the time I sold it, I think I broke even, but I didn't on my time. I didn't on my stress level. I didn't, it was not a good investment. It was a terrible investment because I could have used that money and gained it somewhere else.
Yep.
So.
That's good.
Yeah.
What do you think might be the best investment that you've ever made, or financial decision that you've ever made?
Probably the best financial decision is, I would say there's two things. Is, when you're coming out of school and you're coming out, getting into the working world, investing or insurance or any of that stuff is not very sexy. You're trying to buy a new car. You want to get your own place. You want
a dog.
You want a dog. You want all these things. And finding somebody you trust, and for me, it was Harry and my dad, that pushes you to give minuscule investments at the age of 21, 22, 23, and compound those.
Yeah.
Is probably, and I'll say that, is probably the best thing that I've ever done, because I've watched my friends start 5 years later, 10 years later, and they're making up, even by putting in chunks and chunks and chunks and chunks. That early investment is the best decision I've ever made, because, you can see it at the tail end of your career. I'll be able to hopefully retire when I feel I'm ready to. Yeah. Or I financially can. And so that's probably one of the best decisions I've ever made, business decisions I've ever made, or financial decisions I've ever made. The other would be taking a leap of faith and doing something that I love, and leaving pharmaceutical sales and getting, going from, hey, I've got a salary job, I've got my car paid for, I've got my phone paid for, it's cruising. And realizing that there's a ceiling there that I feel like I can eclipse, and taking a financial risk and making a decision to be my own boss, and then, getting to a point where I am.
Yeah. That's more, and the more people I talk to about that's more of an emotional decision really than it is a financial decision. Right. We want to put numbers on it because it helps us justify one thing or another. Right. But yeah, and I think now there's so much more value in approaching those kinds of decisions with all those pieces on the table, because it is beyond the finances. I mean, financially, that was a bad idea. Right. Who knows what would have happened, what could have happened. Yeah. But emotionally, to be able to put yourself in that place and take that risk. And also the early and often, I was just with another guest a couple of weeks ago, and that was his same sort of best piece of advice as well, was early and often. Even if it's just a little bit, start early, give often. Yep.
And I think the other thing is finding a professional like you trust. Like, a financial planner's job is to guide you to independence at someday, financial independence someday, right? It's just like a real estate agent is supposed to do it. And I feel like finding somebody that you can trust and you feel comfortable with and moves you in that direction is probably as important as investing early, because, I don't watch the investment like a financial planner would. And I feel like that's a huge part of the equation too, is finding somebody that you trust.
It is. Well, man, thanks so much for taking time to share with me and give a little bit of insight into what's going on in this crazy housing market here. And I guess maybe it's not a bubble. So only time will tell. I think there's a lot of interesting opportunities out there, and certainly sort of a crazy time in your world right now, and a little bit of a crazy time in most people's world right now, coming off the pandemic and everything else. So thanks again for taking time with us. Just a quick little sign-off note for everybody. Again, be sure to check out our website at www.seretirementplanners.com, and you can find all of our podcast information there on Spotify, Google Podcasts. You can look at it, check us out on YouTube as well. And Hank Eimer's information will be on the screen. Also, if you need to get in touch with him or anyone in his firm, they'd be more than happy to help you, and I'm sure we'll do a great job taking care of you. So with that, thanks a lot, buddy.
Thank you for having me, man.
All right, talk to you soon.
All right.
Securities and advisory services offered through LPL Financial, a registered investment advisor, member of FINRA, SIPC. Southeast Retirement Planners is not affiliated with LPL Financial or registered as a broker-dealer or investment advisor.